this really heavy piece of kit is the face vise. And as you can see, it has 4 mounting holes here. These will fit into onto this and bolt through from here. This cutout will hold the top rail, so it's all about sizing and positioning for that. So I've made one of these, and I've got to make another one. But I did make 2 of them. This is the first one I made, and I don't know if you can see that, but yeah, I was chiseling this out, and yeah, it just snapped completely. Not because of the knot. I was trying to chisel in the middle of the knot, and you really shouldn't do that. Should have realised and started at that end. That's what I should, if I was going to do that at all. Or use the wood the other way up to avoid the knots completely. But I was trying to cut off this bit, which is quite sappy. It's left sap all over my other piece, I don't know if you can see that there. It's sticky. Okay, there's a trick you can do when you've got stuff on there that you don't want. And that's to take a chisel and gently score it. That'll take off, it's the very top layer, and make it workable again. Well, measure twice, cut once. Measure it, mark it, measure it again, then cut. So, I need to get the height of this. This is very precise height, which is dictated by the vise. Is the vise in the frame? No, it's not. So that's. Be careful how I hold this because it's a bit oily. So it has to be this height, so that when it connects, this will be at the top against this. I've got this slightly proud. I can either plane it down or not, as I need, but that's better than the other way around. So this is a good height, so I'm going to work with this as a template, I think. Yeah. So that's the first thing to do, to mark that out. And so take a ruler, and pencil. I'm using a carpenter's pencil. There are various other types of pencils you can use. There's something called a Jesus pencil, I think, that is highly recommended by some people. Never seen them. Don't know how they're like, but yeah, this is basically 86 millimeters. So I'm going to measure out 86 millimeters. I'm going to mark it both on both corners, both sides of the corner. Keep that going on each side. Now, one of the unfortunate things about cheap timber is that it has bevel on the corner, which makes measuring quite tricky. 86 mil. Mark that up. And steel rules are great for short pieces. There's a trick for longer pieces. No, it's bigger than my ruler, but that's not a problem because I happen to have a set square. This is a set square. It's also a rip saw. They're designed so that this edge is dead straight, and this is a 90-degree angle, and this is a 45-degree angle. Yeah, so you can quite happily measure it Now, I appreciate you can't see what I'm doing, and that's a bit of a problem. I didn't think to put my bench anywhere I could get the camera to go in close up. This may make this an entirely pointless video, but what I'm doing is making these lines straight. And very important now, mark which side you want to keep. So I want to keep this bit and cut off away this bit. So I'm going to mark the waist. Some people like to mark the face. And bolt assemblers I'll be using to assemble the vise. Quickly, I've always wondered about nut and bolt assemblers. I've always been given them to use this. I've never really quite understood what works and why. So this is long enough to go to here, from here to here, leaving enough space at the bottom for the washer and the thickness of the vise itself. That's pretty much a happy fortune, happenstance. The washer itself is there to spread the load of the bolt. So particularly when you're turning the bolt, it doesn't dig into the metalwork or scratch the metalwork below it. Also means that when this is under tension, there's a slightly bigger area to spread the load on, but not that worried about that, which is why I'm using quite a small washer. Now, I should really look at what these are called, but these are the kind of nuts you use to secure metalwork to wood. Take a 10mm clearance hole. You can knock this with a hammer into the 10mm clearance hole, and these spikes will dig into the wood and stop it from turning. So that will sit just there, and that will turn in to that quite happily, and stop at the end of the nut. And that's basically why I chisel this deep, so that I can set that at the very bottom of the nut. It also means that because there's a slight lip just here, that the nut will not come in contact with the bottom of the bench. Because bear in mind, this is right under the bench. And it's sized so that the front, and this slot is sized so that the cheek of the vise, which is the wooden piece of wood that goes inside the vise, and then the vise itself, and that piece of wood, and then this will be 120 on the top, which is 10mm behind the dog hole. So nothing should interfere with the dog holes, nothing should interfere with the vise, everything should be perfectly nice and neat. So let's mark this out. I need to mark out these two slots, and that's basically 4 lines. First of all, I'm just going to use this as a template because that makes life a lot easier than worrying too much. Can always make minor adjustments later. Okay, so I need these at right angles. So again, I'm going to use my saw. I can do this because this is a planed edge. I can't cut to this because this is a sawn edge. I don't know if that's straight. I've got four notches. One of those is not right. Yeah, that's off kilter quite a lot. Let's check that. you one side is right and the other side is wrong. It's good to only make one mark on the wood, but in times like that, you really don't want to cut in the wrong angle. So I want to rub this out. To do that, I'm going to get myself my smallest chisel and just scratch away at it along the grain. And that line will just vanish, which is a really neat trick that my father taught me. See, that line is just gone. I know to cut to that line. And that's the way around. Now the other thing to do is to mark which side is which. So I'm going to run this face vice support. Also I need to mark this side as a face. So the face is this side of the bench, the side you're facing when you do the work. This is the back. Okay, so if anything these are slightly short, and that's okay, I can deal with short. I can always make a hole bigger, you can't make it smaller. Next sanity check. Will this nut fit in this hole? Yes, it will. So that's okay. I don't care how big this hole is as long as this will fit and there is a slight gap between this and this slot. This is my second measurements. So this should be 42 mil. It's 42 and a half. I'll go with that. Do that. Now to the vise. This is an engineer's vise that came with my house, which is actually in good condition. It's a record made in Sheffield, which means it's a good old record as opposed to the newer ones which aren't quite as nice. I've jerry-rigged these cheeks onto the vise so I can use it as a woodworking vise, and those cheeks came from the old face vise which I purchased, which is also a record, also made of cast iron from Sheffield. Let's move that out of the way. You want to think very carefully before you cut anything. I'm going to start cutting off this slot because that's not actually all that critical size and position wise. So to hold the saw, 3 fingers. First finger points down the blade, hold it loosely. Ideally the back of the saw should push onto your hand, and that's where the pressure comes from. Take your thumb, my first finger of the, I use my first finger, it's supposed to be your thumb. For left hand, hold the saw in place. Even though this isn't position critical, I'm going to try and measure it as accurately as I can because it's good practice. Back strokes to start off with. Saw cuts on the push, unless it's a Japanese saw, and you want it to bite. So a few strokes. This way, if you try and push gently when you reach the end of the stroke, and if it doesn't go, just start a new stroke. Because if you hear that skipping, that's the teeth. When you pull it back, the teeth tend to sink down and make little teeth-shaped indentations in the wood. When it skips, those teeth indentations catch the saw and they risk it skipping, which you don't want. This is why you start at an angle. Gradually level up. I don't know if you can see the desk wobbling. You can certainly hear it. Or I can. not play the audio back yet. Okay, squaring off. Now at this point, I'm almost ready to stop, so I want to check both front and the back to see where the end of the notch is. Yep, I'm going to go right into the notch. Now, if I was doing a perfect joint, I would stop slightly short. But because this is out of sight, I'll tie the end of the bench top, and it's not position critical, I'm just going to stop when I hit the line. It doesn't matter if it's a bit messy. Because this bench is all about function over form. Something's very odd here, it's catching like mad. I think I'm through. No. Through on this side, and through on that side, so done. Now, obviously I need to cut the rest of the notch out, but I'm going to cut this first. I'm going to cut the two sides of the face vise, and then I'm going to cut some vertical slots in the middle, which will make it a lot easier to take out. This is a technique I didn't have last week when I was working on the face vise. Now this is off. That's off quite significantly. Well, that's not. Doesn't help. It's not straight in the vise. There's two lines. Right, I'm going to mark the waist. Always mark the waist before you cut. Just helps it to. It helps you from cutting the wrong piece. I should have done that one as well. Yep. When you're setting the work on the vise, get the lines vertical to the ground, not to the vise, because my vise is not square. I learnt that one the hard way. And don't go so far down that you're cutting into the vise jigs. Okay, so I'm cutting on the waist side of the line, making very sure that I'm cutting on the correct line, because I have a few corrections. Blow away the sawdust so you can see the line. Go slowly. Very important to go as slowly as you need to. Don't push down. Yes, pushing down does make you go faster. It also makes the drill more like to skip or move off to one side. Use the full draw of the blade. I keep stopping short because that's what my muscle memory is telling me, but keep your wrists straight. This line should be straight. The movement comes from the shoulder, and the elbow is just there to keep the rest of the arm horizontal. Okay, so when you come towards the line, make sure you check front and back. You don't have to go over the line on either side. This is a joint. It's a half lap joint, so I'm going to stop there. half a millimetre or so above the end of the line. That's about a 16th, 32nd of an inch. As small as I can get it. As close as I can get it to the line without actually touching the line. And same again on this side. This time, I'm cutting the other side of the line because the waste is on the other side. I'm needing to use quite a bit of pressure here because the joint is closing itself up. This is relatively young wood. Young wood is quite sappy, and that tends to bind on the saw quite a bit. The thing that binds the saw is very old wood. Things like oak, when they get more than 20 years old or so, they're so strong you can't saw into them. Right, now I need to then put a series of slots into here. I'm just going to go half a level on those and cut them down. The only thing I'm really worried about is stopping at the bottom. They don't have to be particularly square or anything like that. I'm going to try and make them roughly square and put them about 3/4 of an inch apart, and that's about 2 centimetres apart. Okay, so another 4 or 5 of these to go, and then we can start chiseling. And that's what happens when your drill skips. I pushed before it was ready, and I've taken a big gouge out of the wood. So let's start again. Best way to train a saw to go you want it to is backstrokes, particularly at the start of a cut. Because the backstrokes the drill won't skip. It also won't cut very well, but it'll cut well enough to make a channel. Once it's got a channel, the channel guides the drill, the saw. Okay, another 2. If I get this dead straight, it should be the last one. Okay. The correct type of hammer to use as a chisel is a drop hammer, dead drop hammer, dead drop mallet even. I don't have one, so I'm just going to use an ordinary claw hammer. Now, claw hammers will damage the end of your chisel slightly. This is cosmetic. That's if you have a wooden hammer. Okay, so you want the widest chisel you can get that is narrower than the thing you're working on. I'm going to be using this 1-inch chisel quite a bit. It's about 3 centimetres or so. And the first thing I'm going to do is tap out a score line. Some people do this before they start. They use a scorer and mark the wood. I was taught to cut to a line, so that's what I'm doing. I'm going to also score all the way down here. The advantage of cutting to a score line is you can feel it with as you're working, whereas a pencil line you can only see. Now, really, you should hammer slightly above the line and try and take at least 2 steps to finish off the joint. Because this isn't visible, I'm not bothering with that, I'm just going straight on the line. Score the other side. But all I'm doing is putting the chisel on the line, chamfer side up, because the waste is on top, and scoring down the line. Just so that I can get side line all the way along. Next thing to do is to cut out these slots, which is simply a matter of putting the chisel in and whacking it with a hammer, like so. That's not playing. Why is that not playing? What's happened here is the wood stuck. There we go. Ideally you want to take out about half of the wood, so I'm going to keep going a bit more on that. There we go, a little over half. I'm going to repeat that all the way down here, because I'm cutting out 2 slots, I might as well do them at the same time, because it saves moving the work in the vise. Okay, as soon as anything starts to move, take the chisel out. What you don't want to happen is that, because it'll probably snap the other side. It didn't, and that's why I score the both sides at once before I start chiseling. But there is always a risk. I don't really care that this chisel is slightly bigger than the slots I've cut, because I'm just chiseling out every slot. Good. So turn it around and take them out on the other side. More. And then this one. Why is that not moving? It's not cut on that side. Oh, come on. Okay, there's quite a bit of chaff left in the slot, but I'll be behind the bench here so that I can chisel straight. A little bit further away than I'd like to be, but it's because it's not the final bench. Don't know if you can hear that springy kind of noise, but that's just the workmate wobbling as I hit the stuff on top of it. Let's tidy this up. Let's take a smaller chisel. Oh, it's moved. Chisel and just rake this out. You can use as a knife. Gosh, knife's probably not the best choice, but it's what I have to hand. That will go right into the corners and cut out any rough material. Right, I'm going to chisel that end piece because that's a definite wedge there, and I don't want that wedge. compare that to the other piece, that's pretty decent and that's pretty okay. Again, finesse, you could improve that. Right, next is to cut this piece. It's a perfectly valid way of holding work is to clamp it to the bench top. You don't need vices at all. Vice is just a fancy clamp. It's a strong clamp, but a fairly fancy one. Now, the trick to this, I discovered last time, is to clamp with the clamp as straight as possible at the back, so it's out of the way of the saw. You want to keep the line straight, whatever straight means to you. And I like to have the spikes in the clamp pointing downwards. Can you see this? No. I'm going to lower the camera a little bit. Now I'm cutting along the grain, which means I get to use the rip saw. Rip saw, you hold it exactly like a tandem saw. Get any sawdust off before you start, because that will bind. The only difference is that it's a bit longer and wobblier. You don't want the wobble gets in the way, but it does mean the blade can be thinner, which means it will cut a finer line. And faster, because it doesn't need to move as much waste. A bit careful when I start, because I don't want to hit this clamp. That's a little bit close. So I start exactly the same way as with the rip saw. Just make a couple of back cuts. Holding it in place with my left hand. And gradually start stroking. Now you want to keep the rip saw fairly angled. Tandem saw you want square because you're often cutting out squares, but with the rip saw, the angle works to your advantage because it means you've got a larger cutting area, which means it cuts faster. Forty-five degrees is ideal. Try not to cut your clamp. Use a full stroke. If nothing else, it spreads the weight spreads the wear along the teeth. You notice I'm not quite going to the handle. Part this so I don't hit the wall. Use as much of the stroke as you can. You can risk a shallower angle to get things done a bit faster. Watch as you come towards the end. So, I should point out, this piece is not held up. This piece is. That means gravity, because I've cut the top off, is now going to pull this piece this way. This will open up the joint to make the sawing easier. However, when I get to the bottom, when I get close to the bottom, this will then not have enough mass to hold this, and it will snap off. I don't want that to happen. So when it gets near the bottom, I'm going to start holding this with my left hand so it doesn't break entirely. There we go. I've noticed the last quarter snapped off just as I was catching it. That's a bit of a damage there. Yeah, you can see that whole. I'm not sure how that happened. If anyone knows what happened, let me know. Oh, you can't see my face. I've just remembered. If I do that, how's that? So we now have 2 face vice supports. The only thing left to do is to tidy this up a bit more and drill a couple of pilot holes. Now, I take the face side, put that to the face side of the vice, like so. So I might as well put both of them in. This will help if you realise everything's upside down. That's intentional. It's because I can't put the vice itself on the base. Now that's weird, I can't find that. So, yes, it's the other way around. I can't put the vice itself the right way up, because if I do, A, I'll be able to get at these holes, and B, I'll be putting the whole weight of the vice on the quick release, which won't take it, and I'll break the quick release. So, upside down it is for now. Like that, it's not, it isn't properly, okay, it's not quite. It's a bit disconcerting because these are slightly proud, that's just because of the width of the wood. I have a center punch. With a center punch, I can place the wood in the hole, take a hammer, just mark the center. And that will give me something to start drilling into. They are sided. Yeah. Left face support. Right face support. Right face support. Alright, so I've got 2 holes marked, and I'm going to drill them. Now this one will drill straight through, and I'll need a corresponding hole in the top rail. In case you're wondering, I'm going to cut another slot in the top rail to match this one, but for this hole. So the top rail will bolt through. So one of the bolts will bolt through the support piece and into the top rail, thus holding the vice. Yep. Beautiful Stanley bit, Stanley drill. Goes through quite happily. Very important to keep the drill straight in all dimensions. Well, another tip, if you're going to pull the drill out of the work and it sticks, turn it forwards. It feels like you want to turn it backwards, but for some reason turning it forwards just helps pulling out a bit more. Seems to be because you're using the cutting edge to help you. Okay, so that's a mess anyway, so I don't really care if it's a mess when it comes through. That's a quick tip. Do the drilling before you pull it out, before you tidy up, because you've got to tidy it up anyway. This side, this bit is shorter than the drill, so I'm just going to go as far as I can. These are just pilot holes anyway. I'd like to keep things straight. Is this piece of wood straight? Yes. This is about where the drill bit snaps if you're not careful. trying to keep my bench as neat as I can, but it's not easy. I'm also trying to keep as much stuff on my bench as I can because I want the weight. It really does help it from shivering around. This is temporary. When I get my workshop finished, the bench will be clear. That's the plan. Bench top will be anyway. Now I'm a little bit concerned that that's not square anymore. I do seem to have gone down a bit far on that side. Best thing to do now is offer it up. And if I whacked that with a mallet, that would go on. That will work better though. Okay, so what I've done is I've determined which way around this board goes, because this now has to be the front, because this is slightly thicker on this side. Sorry, this side's slightly thicker on this side, and that will accommodate this gap better. So that's marked that as the front, so let's mark that up. And I now have the two face supports with pilot holes drilled, along with the piece of wood that they will hold on to. So all I need to do now is to cut out two more slots into here, two small mortise style slots, but not very deep, and then I can work on the joint a bit more. I think I'm going to leave that until the very end when I finally assemble it, because I want these in place when I cut the holes, so the holes line up. What I don't want to do is to put these on before I've cut the mortises for the uprights, for the legs, because if I do that with these on, it's going to be unwieldy. So I hope you've enjoyed today's workshop. I've recorded it for posterity. I may have learnt something. I'll probably cut it down a lot before I put it on Shedlog, if it even goes on. Yeah. Okay, so the camera is as low as I can get it, and I'm going to crash down to being shot. I'm probably going to be cut my head off in a minute, but that's fine. What we're interested in here is this piece of work. This is the vice support. To finish it off, I need to drill a 10mm hole here and a 10mm hole here, and this one's run off slightly as a pilot hole, so I might need to recut that. But this one should just be a matter of drilling straight through. In fact, no, I'm going to drill from the other side, because that one has a bit of stuff cut out of it where I pulled the peg out. I can't drill from the other side because it doesn't go all the way through. Okay. It's been a while. Okay, so let's put this on. Okay, it's a brand new bit. It was the cheapest I could find though, and it's not cutting exceptionally well. chaff. So I have to keep pulling it out to pull the chaff out. Can't see the pipe hole anymore. Perhaps I need a bigger pipe hole. Yeah, I think I'm going to just enlarge the pilot hole, just to make my life a little bit easier. So I'm going to take this 6mm bit. Now, using a rotary tool, I should probably have my hair tied back, but as you can see, I'm keeping it well away from the join. The other good thing about these tools is if I do get my hair caught, I can just stop instantly. I don't have to think about it. There's no RPMs, is it? Well, that's through. Now through, I need to pull this out, wind forwards and pull up, holding the desk down if needed. There you go. That should be dead centre, and as you can see, it's not. That's not the end of the world. I just tidy up that top hole. You can see I've gone off on both. The moment of truth. Will it fit? Might as well leave the washer on. We'll go through the hair, straight into here. You can see it's not quite straight. It's supposed to be a clearance hole, but it's not quite because well, it's not straight for one thing. I don't know how it's run off so much. They both run off, and it's the position on this side that matters, because that's the side where the vice is. I'm going to try offering this up to the vice. That's the hole with the bolt in it, but it's not going through the top because the wood's not locked down. To do that, I need to put the vice down. Sorry, I can't do this on camera. That's closing the gap. Yeah, I'm going to need a little bit more cut out on the notch. That's okay, I can do that. But that will go in, and more importantly, if you look at the bolt head, oh, actually, there's a bit of room for tightening on that bolt, but it's more or less flush, so I think I'll get away with that. There's no cutouts in the top rail for this, it just slits. The top rail just sits in this slot, So I don't need to adjust anything on terms of the rail due to errors in these measurements. It just means this will sit like left or right of where it should have done. Yeah. So pilot hole first because I've got the best chance of getting it straight. It seems to be okay front to back, it's side to side that's the issue. Because it's a mixture of twice, or a mixture of cheeks anyway. The shorter holes that you can't actually go all the way through the pilot hole, which means, yeah, it's gone straight through the same hole. Try this, may take some doing. Breakthrough. Never have I spent so long drilling a hole. And again, it needs a little bit of tidy up at the top. It's important to get this relatively clean because it technically is a joint. Although it's not using wood on wood to get strength, it's using the bolts to get strength. So. Oh, that's not bad. Not bad at all. Just visually, I can see the holes lining up. I need 2 bolts. One here. One here. I just want to make sure they go all the way through. Both in the place that the wood has just been knocked out. Yeah. I'm going to drive that in. Okay, so that's in. It's lined up. There will need to be a hole cut into the top rail for this to match that, and this one is a tiny bit proud, maybe proud of the hole. So that's going to need another 3 mil shaving off. I'll do a hole, corresponding hole for that and there. This is on reasonably straight by the looks of it. Let's just get my set square for comparison. I'll line one up, the other straight, so I'm quite happy with that. You can see what's actually happened here. Look at it. Even though this hole has run off, the bolt has pushed its way through the right position. So what I've done is the wood has forgiven me by the elasticity of wood, and it's now on a straight line. Lovely. Right, so now get this off. Which is kind of a pain. Make another one of these and shave this back to the 3 mil. Drill holes in here, line it up, and I'll be ready to fit the vise once the rest of the bench is built. So, right, so a little bit more here. Okay, so I started using a lump hammer instead of a plain claw hammer because of what I was doing to the bottom of my chisel here. Lump hammer has a wider face, it's flatter, it spreads the load a bit more. A drop dead mallet is the best tool, but I don't have one, so I'm making do. I figured all the energy I was putting into damaging the handle was actually energy I wanted in the work, so. A nut, just to make sure it will go. Now let's go. Okay, so immediately there's a problem. This nut will not fit because this side needs a little bit taking out. This is just almost the width of a 10, so a little bit more for clearance. This is not. The position of the hole is relatively important. The position of the notch is not. In this case. Because the notch is just there to set the height of the bolt, of the nut. Well, hence the bolt. Always chisel away from you, never towards you. Chisels are sharp. There's a lot of pressure in them. Now I need to set this into the hole. I might as well do that now. There we go. Not in hole.